you so much for joining us here today for this really important conversation about cell phones, social media, and technology, and their impact on our students and our schools. Today we've gathered a dedicated group of teachers, parents, superintendents, school board members, elected officials, administrators. I even brought my own middle schoolers here to talk about we, as a collective of people who care about kids and schools and learning and youth mental health, what can we do to tackle the very real problems that we face today? And so I want to acknowledge our partners in this effort. This is like a wedding you plan and you hope people will show up, and look at this, you did. We originally thought that this would be about 200 people, and now we are almost 500 people here in this room today. I want to thank the New York State Parent-Teacher Association, the New York State School Boards Association, the New York State Council of School Superintendents, and the School Administrators Association of New York State. All of these organizations care deeply about children and education, and that is why we are all coming together to sound the alarm. We have circled the problem. We know the challenges that we face in our classrooms every day, and we're here today to talk about potential solutions. And so I am really excited to introduce this morning our next speaker, who needs no introduction at all for many reasons, because she has been out front on this issue for over a year now. The governor and I have been tackling the issue of predatory social media companies for over a year and have successfully passed legislation to get that issue resolved. And yes, that is huge. But we cannot stop there. This nation-leading legislation that we passed here in New York State must be considered at the federal level. We also need to start to talk about the influence of cell phones in our schools. Those of us who are in schools every day see the constant use of personal electronics, so not just the phones, but also the earbuds, the watches, and the other distractions. We see the impact they are having on our students' ability to focus, their ability to connect with their fellow students, to be out here in reality, right, instead of in a virtual world, and to engage in authentic learning. So when I told the governor that many of us in schools would welcome this conversation, that we need some state leadership on this issue, she took this and ran with it. She has been around the state holding listening sessions with educators, with parents, with community to talk about how we can solve this very real problem. And she's been clear that she is willing to take any and all action despite any political resistance, because this is the right thing to do for kids. That takes bravery, it takes guts, and I'm proud that she is the governor of the state of New York. Please join me in welcoming Kathy Hochul.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. Yes, this is an extraordinary gathering of people that we could not have foreseen. We started talking about this a year ago. A few enlightened people came forward, people like Melinda, but others were not so sure we could take on something so bold and audacious. But that's right up my alley. I like to do that. The issues that others say are too hard to tackle and move on, I say bring them on. But when I have allies like NYSUT and Melinda Person and all the others gathered here, our school board members, our PTA, our school superintendents, our districts, our principals, parents, I can say there's no stopping us. So we could not have imagined just a year ago a day like today. Absolutely not. And to have so many people here willing to stand up and do what is right, I want to acknowledge some of my colleagues in government. I noticed that we have Senator Shelley Mayer has joined us here. Senator Mayer. Assembly Member Pat Fahey has joined us. Pat Fahey. I saw Harvey Epstein here coming up from the city. Harvey, great to see you as well. The easiest thing in life is doing nothing, right? But when it comes to our kids on an issue like we're talking about today, doing nothing is simply not an option. And when I took office, I vowed change. I had seen that our mental health system here in the state of New York had languished from neglect, forgotten. No one talked about it, but yet New Yorkers were suffering. And you know who was suffering the most? Our kids. I can guarantee that every adult in this room does not wake up thinking about the pandemic anymore. COVID is in the rearview mirror for you. My friends, after listening to countless young people, it is still having an effect on their mental health today. What they went through for a year and a half, 2 years, has profoundly impacted their quality of life and their well-being. So we have to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge that these kids are suffering. And I made a commitment to transform New York's mental health system. And we do it, we don't go halfway. We boosted funding by $1 billion to show our commitment, investing in more psychiatric beds and services and setting aside millions of dollars to help kids with programs, suicide prevention efforts, eating disorder care, peer-to-peer programs. But you know what was so important to me? Was the school-based mental health clinics that when I was growing up, or my kids who are now adults were growing up, you wouldn't have thought you needed. But today, we need them. And we listen to the kids, we listen to parents. And I could not ignore the trends that were emerging beyond the pandemic. What else was having such a detrimental effect on our kids' mental health? And we learned that coinciding with the pandemic was the rise in addictive algorithms, intentionally designed by social media companies to grab your child, your student, and hold them captive. Every generation has struggles. I'm a former teenage girl. I know it's not the easiest time in life. I raised a teenage girl. I'm still around to talk about it, and we're very close now, okay? And none of this is news to you, but the parents and teachers of today are wrestling with something that is unprecedented. And you see this, all of you. I'm not telling you something that those of you who are in constant communication with our kids, our teachers, our administrators, our school boards, you know what I'm talking about. You're on the front lines. And I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with NYSUT and educators to say that, first of all, we have to make sure there's sufficient funding for our schools overall. We've increased school aid. Increased by over $5 billion in 2 years, the largest funding increase in history, and fully funding foundation aid for the first time ever. Tier 6 retirement benefits there to help our teachers, overhauling the reading curriculum. I listened to Melinda, I listened to Randy Weingarten, I listened to Mike Mulgrew about how we're teaching in our schools, why we're teaching reading and phonics based on a system that was put in place 20 years ago and is not successful. So I don't mind reaching into the world and saying we can do better. All these investments have been made with one sole purpose, to do what's best for our kids. But listen, there's something else going on. What we had to do was address these algorithms aggressively, because I'll never forget one of the roundtables I did locally. Number of high school students, they were describing to me what they were going through, and I felt as a mom, more than anything, my heart was breaking, because this young woman said to me, "We can't put down the phones in schools. We can't do it. You have to save us from ourselves." This was a cry for help that hits you right here when you're a mom, you're a parent, you're a teacher who cares. You can't ignore that. What she was referring to was the fact that she'd be ostracized, that she had to know that the kids who were talking about what she was wearing that day or what she was saying or what she was doing in school or their meeting in the lavatory, she needed to be connected, because if you weren't, you were a social outcast. But just imagine a world where no one has the phone with them. No one is an outcast. No one has to worry about being bullied when they should be paying attention to their teacher in the front of the classroom. This is the world we're talking about. The anxiety, the depression, the sadness that never seems to go away. I have close family members. I'm watching them spiraling. They need help. So we took on the social media companies. Not an easy task. I'll tell you that right now, not for the faint of heart. But I said to them, with all these threats of litigation against us, you're going to lose in court. I said, get out of the courtroom and get into my conference room. We can work on this together. We don't have to be adversarial, because I guarantee your corporate leadership, your CEOs, your employees also see what's going on with the product you're creating, and there must be limitations on this. Leave our children alone. Let them get some sleep at night. Don't be bombarding them 24 hours a day with messaging that they did not ask for. That's the whole nature of this. They're taking information about your child, your student, and monetizing their mental health by bombarding them with advertising and messaging over and over and over again. They can go to social media sites if they want to. They can go to support groups. They can go where they want to go. But this is about them being on the receiving end of something they did not ask for. So we changed the law. I thank our legislators. I thank Nili Rozek. I thank Andrew Gennardis for two leaders being champions, stood with me, and our Attorney General, Tish James. Last October, we did a press conference with our teachers and everybody, and we said, we are going to make sure that New York leads. We're going to be #1 in the nation in terms of how far we're willing to go, because the costs are so high if we do nothing. So, online privacy. You should not be capturing information about our kids and selling it. You should not be hitting them during nighttime hours. And parents should be able to be aware and turn off the addictive algorithms. You cannot send them this information anymore. And we got it through. The regulations being worked on, and the rest of the nation is paying attention. Look at Instagram this past week. Now, I'm not saying they went all the way. They have some more to do. But at least they took that step that everybody told me a year ago was impossible. Wait, how will we ever know whether it's someone under 18 or not? We don't have the ability to do that, so we cannot limit our activity with kids under 18. I said, really? You're tech companies. You know how to figure this out. Surprise, surprise, they figured it out. And that's what they did this week, and I need others to do that. So we're looking at this. We're looking at the Surgeon General report on how children are held captive. 3 hours is dangerous. The average is 5. I'm listening to teachers, 72% who say across the country this is a huge distraction. The teachers I met in person who said, I'm in competition. I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to engage, make eye contact, have a relationship with these kids because that's how I can create a bond. And they're not even looking at me. I'm tired of this. This is getting too hard. Those are direct quotes from teachers who want to do their jobs. We have to help them as well. So let me say this. We are doing something. We're taking on the tech giants. They're starting to come around. We need Washington to do more. You'll hear more about that. And I thank Randy Weingarten for being a national leader on this and being our champion in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Randy. Thank you. But the cell phone in schools issues, I will tell you this. This has been an evolution for me personally. My kids were in middle school during Columbine, right? This is when you have that sense of security shaken to the core that something could happen to your child when they're out of your watch, something devastating, a shooting, mass shooting. I was listening to a lot of people who thought that you need to have that connection all day long just in case something happens. And I realized my first thought was wrong. When I listened to law enforcement who said, if there is a crisis on the school grounds, there is a shooter running loose, The last thing you want happening is for your child to be looking on their cell phone, maybe videoing, sending messages, trying to go viral, and not paying attention to the adult in the room who is trained to get them to safety. All I need to hear was that from multiple members of law enforcement, and I said, you know what, you're right. And I also want our kids to grow up free from this influence throughout the day. I can't help what happens after hours. Mom and Dad, that's up to all of you. We need to do more. We need to set the example as well. Let's set the example as well. When it comes to the school day, I want our kids to be kids again. I want them to talk to each other in the hallways. I want them to yell and talk to each other in the schoolyard. I want them to communicate during lunchtime. I want them to develop the interpersonal relationships that are not occurring right now. Because I've said this many times, our number one job is to raise adults, not raise kids. Our job is to raise adults, fully functioning adults who emerge from childhood with the social skills that they develop in school settings. They're being denied that now because the cell phone has taken over human interaction. We can stop this now. We can work with the kids who've already had to deal with the stress and the anxiety and all those pressures. We can help them. But wouldn't it be fantastic to know that their younger siblings will enter a very different world, closer to our childhoods? When you went out and kicked a ball, you talked to someone on the phone for fun, you got together, went to the movies. Your world was not taken into a device. We owe that to our kids, my friends. We owe that to them. Let's right the wrongs of the past when nobody had the courage to stand up and say, this has gone too far. We did not have leaders like Melinda Person and everybody in this room say, enough is enough. Let's let our kids have a childhood free from this interference, this disruption. I guarantee they'll be able to emerge fully functioning in technology, go to the tech jobs. All the opposition I'm hearing, I can find an answer and say, no, this is more important. So my question is this. Are you with me when it comes to saving our children right here and right now? Are you with me? Can we get this done? Do we have the political courage to stand up and do what's right? My friends, if the answer is yes, we will look back at this time and say, we finally saved the next generation of kids, and it all started in a room like this right here in Albany. Thank you very much, everyone.